Namaskar and welcome to Indian Diplomacy, show on India's national television channel Doordarshan about Indian foreign policy, India's international relations and key developments around the world that have a bearing and an impact on India's rise. Viewers, this is a special episode where we are taking a close look at the phenomenon of multilateral diplomacy. The idea of more than two countries coming together based on shared interests and common problems to help remake the world in a better way. This is the core of multilateralism and has existed for many decades, but is lately struggling. And so, we are discussing multilateralism in all its different manifestations and what future does multilateralism hold. And to discuss this, I am very privileged to introduce you to a very distinguished former Indian Foreign Service officer, ambassador and former Indian permanent representative to the United Nations, Ambassador Ruchira Kamboj. Ambassador Kamboj is a very well known face, a most articulate voice of India on the world stage for a long time, and she was our High Commissioner to South Africa, Ambassador to Bhutan, and retired as our permanent representative to the United Nations. Ambassador Kamboj, welcome to Indian Diplomacy.
Thank you, Sreeram, for those very kind words, and I'm delighted to be in your program, and my greetings to all your viewers.
Right. Ruchiraji, if you take the big picture view of multilateralism as it is today, it's very grim, and you yourself have been highlighting many of its flaws and deficiencies and inadequacies over the years during your career and after as well. So, if you were to look at the big picture and say what is ailing multilateralism, if you could please reflect on this, and is this now going to be like a permanent problem as you see it?
No, I think that's a very fair question, Sreeram. Multilateralism is failing, has failed, is in decline, is even dead. I mean, we hear all of that today and so much more. And I have to admit that it is not entirely wrong, because if you look around you, there are so many conflicts raging around the globe, much more than at any other time, as we are told. And even if you look at the two major conflicts today in the world, Ukraine and Gaza, as and when these are solved, it would appear that these will be solved not because of the UN Security Council, but despite the UN Security Council. So let's step back a bit and look at this whole issue a little bit more closely. Let's go back to 1945.
Yeah.
The UN is formed, and what happens after that? The Cold War. What about multilateralism, the UN that has recently been formed? Well, it is very severely tested. It is very severely challenged.
Paralyzed almost. Yeah?
Absolutely.
Cold War period, yeah.
And then you jump to 1991. The Cold War ends. And then multilateralism seems to hit a purple patch. A sort of a golden era, if I may say so. 1992, you have the UNFCCC. 1992 was really a golden year, because then you also had the Convention on Desertification. You had the Convention on Biodiversity. You go to 1995 and you have the World Trade Organization. 1997, another agreement, the Kyoto Protocol. Right. And then the year 2000, the Millennium Development Goals. And you almost start believing in the rhetoric, we are in it together.
Yes.
But what happens after that? And mind you, in the 90s, which was a relative period of optimism as far as multilateralism is concerned, you do have a Rwanda.
And Yugoslavia.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But let's go into the 2000s now. What happens after that? The year was 2004. I was a junior officer at the Permanent Mission of India to the United Nations, and the then Secretary General, Kofi Annan, what does he do? He gets together a bunch of eminent personalities, men and women, to look into the requirement of a UN 2.0, a reinvigorated, a reformed United Nations. So that topic was topical even then.
Yeah.
And what do the eminent personalities do? They come up with a report, threats, challenges and changes to the UN system. They even recommend a reform of the UN Security Council, precisely your point, where they can't seem to agree at all. They come up with a Model A and a Model B, a Model A that argues for comprehensive reform, including a reform of the working methods of the Security Council, and a Model B, which is an expansion in the elected category only, the quick fix Band-Aid reform, to which we are opposed. So the point I'm making is that multilateralism has never had a steady, smooth advance. It's always worked in fits and starts. So what you're seeing today is more of the same, albeit
or a more exacerbated version of it, because now
yes,
the so-called new Cold War.
Many more conflicts
Yeah.
in the world today. The SDGs are falling behind and all of that. But despite all of that, your question whether it's all gloom and doom. The point of the matter is that multilateralism yet has a convening power that I am not aware of with any other organization or alliance. So you have this as a platform where countries engage, negotiate, collaborate, come together. They importantly establish shared norms and standards and frameworks and benchmarks. The Universal Declaration of Human Rights. You have TRIPS, you have the UN Convention on the Law of the Sea, and most recently in modern times, you had a framework in the Global Digital Compact adopted in 2024 as an addendum to the Pact for the Future. So there's nothing new about this. Multilateralism's always been in trouble, one way or the other. And in fact, I would go so far as to say that the challenge of modern diplomacy is to balance the two, balance the national interest with the imperative of the common good.
Yeah,
so it's
absolutely.
not a completely doom and gloom scenario, even as I'm the first to admit that it is in serious trouble, it is in decline as we knew it.
Yeah, so a time series, if you take a longer term view, you're right, it's not always been hunky-dory, except in the post-Cold War, immediate post-Cold War period, whereas there
A
was
relative
so-called
period of optimism.
yeah, and the
Yes.
liberal international order was supposedly at the peak under US leadership. Talking of our own position, Ruchiraji, India, a middle or a rising power now as we call it, has a unique position. You were helming it when we had a non-permanent seat in the Security Council, and now the question really is, what is India being able to do in this kind of a very volatile and uncertain era for multilateralism? And to start with, let's talk about the big universal organizations like the UN, where we have shown a great deal of responsibility, invested a lot of our diplomatic energies and shown leadership on many fronts. So how important is a country like India, you think, in this current phase of multilateralism, which, as you say, is in big trouble, but we are keen that it is reformed and that it's fairer, and it also addresses the needs and the interests of the weakest countries. So let's talk about India's unique role and position as you see it as a practitioner. You've seen it yourself. You've been our main voice and face on this matter. How can we demonstrate our capability to be a bridge in this extremely divided and broken or world where there seems to be no international community per se?
Yeah, Sreeram, I agree with you. So let's break it down a little bit. Let's look at the rising powers, the emerging powers, and the middle powers. So do they have the power of the veto in the UN system? No, they don't. Do they have the economic might of the P5? Not yet. But what about leverage? What about influence? They have that quite considerably. And let's look at India, because that's specifically what you've asked me about. Well, the voice of India, as I saw it when I was myself at the United Nations, and earlier in 2014, when I was also at UNESCO, the voice of India really matters. And why? Because it is indeed a bridge builder, not just a cliche, but it is a fact. You can talk to the developed countries, and you can equally talk to the developing countries. And you have credibility. You're seen as an engaged player. You're seen as an empathetic player. So India's voice really matters at the United Nations. Now let me give you 2-3 very quick instances as I saw it at the United Nations. Let me take you back to October 2022. India was in the Security Council, and we were chairing a very important and a high-profile committee of the Security Council. And what was that? That was the UN's Counter-Terrorism Committee. We had earlier flagged counter-terrorism as one of our key priorities during the presidency of the Council. So what do we do? For the very first time in the history of the Security Council, mind you, we bring all 15 players to India for a special meeting of the Counter-Terrorism Committee.
In Mumbai, it was in Mumbai, I think.
Mumbai and Delhi.
Yeah.
And mind you, not just representatives of the Security Council, ambassadors, which is very critical, but we also got 6 ministers in that mix. And it was a 2-3 day visit, you're right. The first day was in Mumbai, when all of us ensemble paid homage to the victims of 26/11. It was a very poignant ceremony. I was there myself. And on day 2, we come down to Delhi for the substantive discussions. And you know, as well as I do, anyone knows that what good is a meeting without an outcome document? And we had been working behind the scenes for that outcome document, which was eventually adopted by all 15 members of the council unanimously.
Including China, which historically has been
Absolutely.
a stumbling block for us on counterterrorism.
Yes, exactly. That is the point that I was myself going to make, including China, including many of the others, on an issue as sensitive as terrorism, where, as you know, and our viewers will also know, you are yet to agree on a definition of terrorism in the United Nations. So what do? You get all 15 to adopt a declaration called the New Delhi Declaration, where all 15 unanimously agree that terrorism is an evil. It's a pure evil, and it must be stamped out unitedly, no matter who commits it, no matter where it is committed, no matter when it is committed. And you also get them to focus on something very important: the misuse of new and emerging technologies by terrorists, including the use of drones, including crowdfunding, and including the use of social media. So that was a very substantive statement, and India could manage that. Because you are a country, you can talk to both sides, and you can convince both of them too. And then I'll take it a step further. December 22. We were the president of the Security Council. We got the opportunity yet again, a second time, to set the tone and agenda. And again, counter-terrorism was something very important for us during the course of that presidency. So what do? We further the New Delhi Declaration, and we adopt a presidential statement with all 15 members on board on counter-terrorism. Now, let me indicate to you a little bit of the drama that went on behind the scenes. As the president, you circulate a draft presidential statement. You have several rounds of negotiations, not one but several, understandable because of the polarization. Then you have a draft that finally emerges. You have several iterations of the draft, several iterations. And finally, after that, your draft undergoes many rounds of silence procedures. So much so that you're not sure whether you'll be able to adopt it, which is more the norm in the Security Council then than what is normally the case. More often than not, unanimity is not easy. So just at the very nick of time, through several rounds of negotiations, talking to countries again and again, convincing them, you have a presidential statement. And that really is a tribute to the moderating role that India can play. And to set the matter in perspective, let me also draw your attention to the fact that in August 2022, the Black Sea Grain Initiative was really a big thing. Everyone was talking about it at the United Nations, which was focusing then on humanitarian activity, given that they couldn't directly negotiate in the conflict. So there was an air of optimism. So we were told as council members, let's have a very short statement, not even a presidential statement, on the Black Sea Grain Initiative, lauding the UN and the Secretary General for this initiative. But it wasn't possible. But when India was the chair of the Counter-Terrorism Committee, and when India chaired the Security Council in December, we managed to get all 15 members of the Council to agree on a statement and a declaration. And lest you think this is only in the Security Council, when we stepped out of the Council and were one amongst the many countries in the General Assembly, we spearheaded a very important resolution on peacekeeping. On a peacekeeping memorial wall, paying tribute, homage to the noble soldiers who have lost their lives. Because in 2015, the Prime Minister of India at the Peace Operations Summit at the United Nations had said that India stands ready to support such a peacekeeping memorial wall and is ready to put her money where her mouth is.
And we have financed, we have supported.
Yes, we do that. So we lobby intensively behind the scenes, and what's the end result? A UNGA resolution that has the maximum number of co-sponsors ever in the history of the United Nations GA resolutions, 190 countries. That is almost the entire membership of the United Nations agrees.
Yeah.
Because India is helming this General Assembly
Amazing.
resolution.
So
These are instances, you
yeah.
know, where India is playing a very, very constructive role.
Yes.
But I do want to add one final point, lest you think I'm getting carried away, that there is a ceiling to all of this, naturally, because of the chokehold by the P5 in the United Nations system. At the end of the day, any resolution, no matter how well it is crafted, can be axed by the P5 in the Security Council. So it's not like you're rewriting the rules of the game, but you're trying to carve out a space for yourself within a rigged board.
Well, that's very articulately put. Yeah, so there are still constraints within which rising powers operate, but we are proud of the work that our diplomats are doing there. Ruchira ji, the public would also be interested in knowing how we decide on resolutions in the General Assembly and the Security Council. I mean, many times people just know about it ex post facto in the news media saying India abstained or India voted yes or no. And these days, with all these conflicts raging, the so-called new Cold War, every issue seems to be very, high wire. You know, there's a degree of tension around it, and expectation and pressures also on India to go this way or that way. So, how do you decide on these things? I mean, as a permanent representative, you take the call. Is Dr. Jaishankar and his team taking the call, MEA and at the PMO level? Do you have a general policy on a certain issue, saying, okay, on Russia-Ukraine war, this is our general policy; on Gaza war, this is our policy; on war in the Congo, this is our policy, and so on and so forth? Or is it on an a la carte basis, depending on the changing weeks and months and the the ebbs and flows of the geopolitical developments? So tell us, audience, a little bit about how the process of voting, and because some people think it's a black box, and especially you hear from Western commentators that India is inscrutable and we really don't understand why they are making a call on this in this way or that way.
No, that's a very interesting question. Well, I would say the short answer to that is teamwork. Frankly, Sreeram, I am not aware of any permanent mission in New York or in Geneva for that matter that would be able to take its own decision on a critical issue. It just doesn't work like that. The permanent mission in question, it is charged with the responsibility of tracking developments on the ground. And we do our work very well, very thoroughly, that is our work. Resolutions move very fast. There are several iterations of the draft. There can be many iterations in the space of a couple of hours. Wow. And unless you're on top of the plot, you might not read the signals very well. So that is a very intense job. So the permanent representative, as the leader of the team on the ground, makes a very carefully considered recommendation to the ministry. And then, of course, it is the larger establishment that kicks in. You could consult subject experts, policy experts, and the larger foreign policy establishment then sends its recommendation as a collective. So I would say teamwork. And to your point, to your question, whether it is something across the board, for instance, on one particular issue, because you voted a particular way, whether you would continue to vote that particular way? No. The answer is that no matter what the issue is, no matter how many times that issue comes up in the General Assembly, because we are not in the council right now, no matter how many times that issue comes up in the General Assembly, each instance is sui generis. So it is a lot of hard work. It may not appear to be so, but as they say, never judge a book by its cover.
Oh yes, of course, yeah. So there will always be nuances in our approach, and also given that we are a rising power, we have to take into account so many balancing factors from different sides. Ruchira ji, there is we spoke so far about the UN, about the universal multilateral institutions. WTO, UN has 193, the WTO has 162 member countries. So these seem to be struggling, and like we have said, are paralyzed in the current era. But there are these smaller group multilateral processes and institutions that are thriving, and India is taking the lead role in some of them. Our G20 presidency was the best example of it, and we are part of BRICS. And BRICS, as you know, used to be 5 members and now it's become 11 members. It's also growing in size. So the small group, what we call plurilateralism or minilateralism, is thriving. Even in trade, we are going for FTAs, free trade agreements with small groups of countries. So is this the future of multilateralism, which is relatively going to be cocooned from the broader divisions at the universal level? So is small group multilateralism something that you see as the main and the viable path going forward?
No, I think that's a very interesting question. What I would say is that this trend towards minilaterals and plurilaterals, it's real. It's here to stay, at least for some time. And I think it's a positive trend, because if you look at the issue-specific coalitions, we know all of them, so why name them? All of them have many advantages. You have countries where interests seem to align. They are quicker, they are faster, they are more nimble, whatever adjective you use, targeted problem solving. Whereas the larger system is struggling. We all agree on that. But I do not see it as an either-or situation. I don't see it as that. I think the one can complement the other. So you have the larger system for its universality, for its convening power, and quite frankly for its optics. But you have the smaller system, which is working for the action. So I think the two can exist. A sort of a hybrid is emerging for now. I think multilateralism as we know it is too baked in for it to vanish overnight. You know, there are many countries, let me tell you, the small countries and many other countries who feel that it is doing good work in various sectors. The funds and agencies and programs are actually bringing a great value add. But the fact is that no one picks that up. And that is a fact. No one picks that up.
Yeah, bad news makes the news. Yeah.
Correct, correct. So there are many who feel that the UN will go ahead with the sectoral successes. And many of the small states see a lot of value in the UN system. So I think there'll be a bit of a hybrid where you will have the larger system for its convening power and for the optics, and you'll have the smaller alliances which are working. But at the end of the day, there has been some criticism also for these smaller formations that they might lead to potential fragmentation.
Yeah, like clubs.
Exactly, which might lead to some powers being excluded. So there is also the charge that it could be potentially patchy, it could be potentially exclusive. So that is also there. And let's remember that they are not replacements of the multilateral system as we know it, but workarounds. So I see the two working together, a bit of a hybrid, the larger system, and of course the smaller formations that are actually delivering on the ground.
Yeah, in fact the G20 is like a mutually reinforcing loop, isn't it? The advisory given by the G20 then goes into the UN processes,
Yes,
and vice
indeed,
versa.
indeed,
So yeah,
indeed.
it's true
In
that
fact,
you
you've
cannot.
raised a very good point. There is a forum of small states in the UN.
Right.
100 small states, where many countries play a very important role, small states play a very important role. They have an annual interface with the G20 in the margins of the UNGA every year. So that is how the small states who bunch together and who are quite a formidable formation in the UN system can actually place their concerns before the G20, and therefore the smaller system, the smaller states, their concerns feed into the larger system, the countries that are actually fronting most of the key issues today.
Right. Ruchira ji, last but not least, India, we are saying it's a rising power. It's not yet a so-called great power like China or the US, but we expect it to catch up and to, you know, be their equals in time to come. So how critical are both the small group and large group multilaterals in your view for our overall grand strategy as a country, you know? From core national interest point of view? Sometimes you hear what we call the hardcore realists who say that, oh, this is all just talk, and you know the UN and WTO, none of these matter. You just need to do deal one on one and behave like a, you know, big boy now. You know, you're no longer small, and why take along everybody? There is that viewpoint, right, which is cynical about multilateralism, and they say that this is not going to get you to your ultimate, you know, desired goal of being a leading power. You have to build a military, you have to build a high economic growth, and you have to be aggressive, and that's how you will become, you know, number one or equal to China and the US. But we have seen that historically also rising powers do rely on multilateralism as a stepping stone to become a great power. So in your thought, you know, what do you think is the significance, overall significance of multilateralism for India as it ascends in the international order?
I think India is playing a very remarkable role. I just gave you many instances when we were in the Security Council. But at the end of the day, we are a country that is a leading light from the global south. We run a very successful program from our mission in New York called the India UN Development Fund, where we extend grants as technical assistance to developing countries. We speak as a country with a voice of moderation, it's a voice of reason, and thereby it's a voice that is respected. And we are a country that can cut across. We talk to both sides, the developed world and the developing world. We are very active participants in the G77 format. We can amplify our influence through the BIMSTEC. So therefore, as a country, I think India is taken very seriously, I assure you, at the United Nations, whether you're in the Council or you're not in the Council. And from time to time, there are various initiatives that India has taken. I recall from my time, even outside the Security Council, whether you showcase your capacities on the soft front. Don't forget International Yoga Day.
Yoga Day, yes.
I mean, we were the only country that could set a Guinness World Record at 7 a.m. in the morning. Everyone turned up.
We saw Prime Minister performing with
exactly
large
Prime
crowds,
Minister led from the front
outside the UN headquarters.
Exactly. And why do you think everyone came at 7 a.m. in the morning? The one country that is an acknowledged leader today at the United Nations, as much for its soft power as for its economic might that is growing, military capacities that are constantly growing, world's largest democracy, of course, and the 5th largest economy.
Yeah, yeah. So viewers, fascinating conversation with India's former permanent representative to the United Nations, Ambassador Ruchira Kamboj. My takeaway is that multilateralism, for all its flaws, still matters, and there's just no way we can just dispense with it and believe that we'll have a world order. So unless you want total anarchy and chaos and a war of all against all, to use a classic political philosophy concept, there's just no way we can dispense with multilateralism. So multilateralism has struggled in the past as well, as Ambassador Kamboj referred to us, and it is going to continue to run into a lot of obstacles, especially given the headwinds of the geopolitical clashes and the rivalries. We have a trade war on one hand, we have burning hot military wars on the other hand. So the UN system, the WTO, most of these organizations have the plates full in terms of the crisis, and they seem to be not up to the task. And but on the other hand, the ray of hope, as Ambassador Kamboj mentioned, is India and countries like us who come together as emerging powers, rising powers, and we are actually voice of reason. We have a neutral and a balanced position on most issues, and we think about the larger good of humanity and about maintaining some semblance of a so-called international community. The absence of an international community means, like I said, anarchy and a world that is far worse and far more dangerous than what we are seeing right now. So yes, a lot of worries and concerns about the UN as well as other multilateral institutions, but there's also hope that as India rises, as we become more prominent, especially through economic growth, through military might, but also through our diplomacy, not just the bilateral strategic partnerships that we have with key countries, but in multilateral forums, all these will add up to India's rise. So let us continue to have faith in the processes. Small group multilateralism, already India is shining. Large group, whenever it can get its act together, I think we should get our due place, but that is a long-term struggle. Let me thank Ambassador Kamboj for joining me today. Thank you, ma'am. You made India proud so many times, and we feel so honored.
Thank you so much. It was a pleasure. Thank you so much.
Viewers, multilateral diplomacy is something that we can only ignore at our peril. We have to make sure that these processes continue, because our place and stature in the world rises concomitant to the kind of constructive role that India plays in these organizations. It may be a little intangible, it may be moral, it might sound like grandstanding, but there's much more substantive work that India is doing, more than just the optics or the talking. So let's continue to cheer for India as we place high emphasis on multilateralism as a matter of principle, because that is how we are able to make this world safer and more prosperous. Thank you for watching. I'll see you again next time. Until then, take care.